Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Thursday now, October the 5th, 2023. On the update today, we'll be talking about Philippe and how it's going to interact with some upper-level energy and become a pretty large ocean storm, kind of a hybrid where you've got the tropical system and some baroclinic energy coming in, and the result is going to be a big mess. That's why I have it in the headline there on the title card graphic and the thumbnail, because all of that's going to be headed up towards Atlantic Canada and parts of Maine, the Gulf of Maine and that vicinity, and just a nasty weekend coming up for that area from Philippe. And again, this other energy that's coming in, big cold front sweeping through the eastern United States. Is going to be a chilly weekend, a fall weekend if you like that kind of stuff. I'm a summer guy. I like the hot temperatures. Yeah, every once in a while fall is nice, but I'm more of a hot weather guy myself. But we're not here to necessarily talk about me. Let's talk about what's happening in the tropics. Even though I might be the host, we'll stay focused on this, right? Well, here's Philippe, and the winds are about 50 miles per hour now. Pressure 1,005 millibars. Is starting to undergo some of that transition into extratropical. A couple things to note, though, in the key messages. Tropical storm conditions are expected on Bermuda beginning early Friday morning. So we'll be certainly talking with our friends there, Howard and Jay. We communicate regularly about what they are experiencing. It's not going to be much more than a nuisance. And of course, Bermuda is built very strong, so this will just be like a nuisance, like I said. Then Philippe is expected to move over portions of Atlantic Canada and eastern New England as a post-tropical cyclone. And again, this is a label. I say it over and over. We're going to get there to where I don't have to say it every time, right? We will learn people into this new process, so to speak. We're going to teach you, and everybody will be on the same page as to what all this means. Post-tropical is just a definition of the structure and whatever, right? The impacts will be the same. Heavy rain in places, gusty winds, onshore flow could bring some big waves, breaking waves, that kind of thing that are destructive. Potentially some storm surge, right, in the right spots. You just never know. And that'll be mostly, as the headlines and the bullet points here talk about, mostly be Atlantic Canada, but parts of eastern New England and, especially Maine. It'll be impacting your area as well. So it's interesting, though. Let's look at the discussion. I have not looked at this as often as I probably should. This is a great tool, and I got to make a mental note for next year. Use the discussion more during these discussions, because this really is everything laid out, and in this case in 3 paragraphs from a real living and breathing person. There's no AI down there. This is from Mr. Berg. I know Mr. Berg, and went to NC State, I do believe, if memory serves. Anyway, just showing you that it's a real person. So this is part of what's happening now. Philippe's low-level circulation remains broad, so forth and so on. This is about what's happening with the flight fixes and some of the information about how it is going to interact with baroclinic zone, the baroclinic zone. Again, this is all the meteorology in here behind the forecast. So what's going to happen because of this baroclinic zone, it'll develop a non-tropical low and to the west from Philippe. So it's going to be this big mess, right? All kinds of just mischief in here. Not an easy forecast. You've seen the animation, I'm sure. I don't remember who exactly produced it, where it showed the cone over the lifespan of Philippe, and it just looks wild out there. This one has definitely been a huge challenge. But the intensity, for those of us that really want to know, well, how strong is it going to get? And that's a valid question. You just got to remember, intensity doesn't always translate to sensible impacts that we can feel. Because it could be very intense in the core, but you could get very heavy rain on the rain bands, and that could be your only impact. You understand? So let's read that, though. Little change in intensity is expected during the next day or two, particularly since model guidance suggests that the shear over Philippe could strengthen further. Despite the shear, some additional strengthening is possible in about 48 hours, when Philippe could experience an injection or receive an injection of baroclinic energy from the trough located east of Florida. That's that interaction that I was talking about there that's going to make this pretty messy overall. That process should also kickstart the extratropical transition, and the National Hurricane Center forecast shows the transition complete by 60 hours, so about late Saturday, when Philippe is located offshore of Nova Scotia. Weakening is forecast once Philippe moves inland, and it's likely that the strongest winds from the system will continue to occur on the eastern side of the circulation, primarily over parts of Atlantic Canada. So for those of you in New England, this paragraph right here really helps to spell out what you could expect, and the same is true for Atlantic Canada, specifically Nova Scotia. And I'll show you this in the GFS model in just a moment. So real quick look at the satellite animation courtesy of Tropical Tidbits. Here is the big cold front coming. We've got this trough off the east coast of the United States, this upper level trough, and that's going to interact with Philippe, and all of that's going to pinwheel its way up here towards Atlantic Canada, and I've used it over and over today, resulting in a big mess. Absolutely. But first, Bermuda, you're going to get tropical storm conditions, big waves coming in along the southern shores, that kind of thing. But again, Bermuda is more than adequately prepared, and it'll be a nuisance for there for sure. Meanwhile, we don't want to ignore Lydia out here in the eastern Pacific. Not much to say about it. Currently, it's going to go this way, and then it looks like it will try to turn back toward Mexico, and we will talk about that more later once that begins to happen. Also, real quick, let's go back to the Hurricane Center homepage. Looking out at the Atlantic, one more Cape Verde or Cabo Verde system possible over the next several days. This is likely, if it forms, to stay out in the open Atlantic out here. Just too much troughiness and whatnot over the western Atlantic to get anything across right now. We will continue to watch this area for potential impacts from Atlantic, Caribbean, or Eastern Pacific systems, because yes, we do have another one that's trying to develop, Eastpac Invest Area 99, or 99E, however you want to say it. And we got to watch this one because it could develop and then try to cross over, bringing some energy up here. We'll show you that too on the GFS. All kinds of stuff going on. So that's this part of the sector of the Western Hemisphere. Let's slide east a little bit. That's a great look at what's happening with Philippe. A lot of energy out there. Already a cloudy day here in Bermuda. Heavy rain bands will be incoming. Finally, down here in the Northeast Caribbean, including a good chunk of Puerto Rico, you guys will be able to dry out. A little bit of a tail left from Philippe there. Might be bringing some occasional rain showers to the Virgin Islands, but that's about it. And then out in the Eastern Atlantic, strong upper level winds are prevailing right now. This other disturbance that'll be coming off in the next few days, we'll see. Might eke Sean out of it. Sean's the next name. We might eke it out, as they say, or as I say, and I'm saying now. Anyway, let's look at the track map from the HurricaneTrack site here over on the insider pages. That, of course, this is created by Will Woodgate over from the UK. There's Lydia. There's Philippe. And one thing I probably should ask Will to do is to designate these colors up here like the Hurricane Center does as post-tropical. Will's always looking for new ways to improve things, so we'll come up with a unique way to display that, because we don't want it to be misleading. This will not be a tropical storm. It'll be post-tropical at 60 miles per hour up here as this makes landfall. I mean, the center, whatever. It's going to be a huge wind area up here, mainly to the east, and it is best to show you on the GFS how this evolves. We're looking at the 10-meter wind and mean sea level pressure. Here is the overall system down here. Not a lot of wind with it overall right now, but watch what happens as we move through time. It develops that secondary surface low, the overall system does out there, west of Bermuda, and then that whole package moves up towards Atlantic Canada. And yes, there could be some tropical storm winds, tropical storm force 34 knots, 40 miles per hour or higher, coming into parts of Atlantic Canada, as you can see there. And even Bermuda, and not too bad, just mainly some rain squalls, that kind of thing tomorrow. But then the bulk of the action does lift up into Nova Scotia, the Gulf of Maine, the Bay of Fundy, and that area. And then it actually pinwheels around all that baroclinic energy up here, and you get a 978 low. And I'll show you in just a minute on a different panel. It actually is going to dump some snow in parts of southern Quebec up there. Snow. Already talking about that. And just to give you an idea, too, of some of the hurricane-specific models, this is the HAFS A and the parent model, so you get a nice big view instead of a nested model version. And you see what happens. The HAFS is not very enthusiastic, but you do get some yellows in there, and it overall tries to wrap up. Maybe some onshore flow, depending on how all this comes together. This is 66 hours out. Maybe the Gulf of Maine a little bit rough up there, and then on the eastern side, parts of western Nova Scotia getting in on some tropical storm winds. But, it's par for the course up there. They don't like it, but it certainly is not unusual to get strong storms up in this part of the Atlantic. I mean, they made a movie about it based on the Sebastian Junger book called The Perfect Storm. You get these big storms in the Atlantic, especially in October. People are aware. They do their livelihoods, all that, with the knowledge that the Atlantic sometimes can cause trouble in the weather above the Atlantic, not just the Atlantic itself, but you get the idea. Not a real big problem, but impactful nevertheless. This is what the H-Wharf shows, and it's a shame they're going to get rid of the H-Wharf. In the off-season, I need to talk to a couple of the people down at the Hurricane Center and just get a refresher on how everything's going with all these new models, what's in, what's out. Maybe we can even do it's been a while since I've done a Hurricane U episode, our little educational series. We should get a couple of folks on there to talk about the models. Another mental note for 2024. All right, so the H-Wharf, the Hurricane Weather Research Forecast Model, does show a little bit more oomph to it, UMPH, right? As these scientific words, right? Messy and oomph. Yeah. But yeah, Bermuda could get a little bit stronger wind on this particular model. And then look at how the whole envelope of energy is shaped there, this oval shape. You have two competing areas of energy out there, and that is why, among other things, Philippe will not be consolidated and considerably stronger. Of course, the upper level winds aren't helping and that kind of thing. The H-Wharf is stronger pressure-wise, gets it down to 975. Might be overdoing it. We'll have to just wait and see. The bottom line, as I've said, impacts are coming for a good part of Atlantic Canada up here, maybe parts of eastern Maine and the Bay of Fundy and elsewhere. Now, as I talked about, watch up here in the northern part of the chart, the top of the chart. Philippe comes in with that energy that it pivots around, and all that blue. It's been a while since we've seen that. The blues, the different gradients of the blue, indicate different snowfall rates. And yes, we could have some of that in parts of southern Canada, well away from the ocean, as cold enough air drains down and gets mixed in heavy wet snow in that area. Winter isn't going to be too far behind, and I think we're going to have a very active time of it along the southeast. The El Nino winter, a lot of rumblings about it, so stay tuned for that. We'll talk about that going forward, because remember, at HurricaneTrack, thanks to our support from our patrons all over the world, we are able to do basically 12 months of weather coverage focusing on hurricanes. Hurricanes are like the Super Bowl of weather to me, and then the other weather is kind of like your regular season games, and it gives us practice to make sure that we are ready for the big hurricanes, just like we were, as an example, for Idalia, the one and only significant impact event so far. We still have some time to go of 2023. And speaking of Patreon, they have done a couple of really neat things lately that I just want to call your attention to. In recent months, they've allowed, if the creator, which is me, does so, for you to join for free. Become a member of the community without having to pledge any support. I think that's a great idea because it grows that community. And we are now over 1,100 strong, almost 1,200, 1,191 as of today. And then a certain segment of that group can choose a membership that fits their budget. And then you can change that membership from month to month. Again, a great idea. There's not a one-size-fits-all situation for subscriptions or memberships. And you look at other sites, like the big streaming sites, they just keep raising their membership fees. Not here. They've all stayed this way for at least the last 3 years, if not longer. So very, very happy about what Patreon is doing, allowing the creator, again, me, and our back-end team here at HurricaneTrack to do more and more and more. And then the latest thing that they've enabled is, it's a very simple thing. While we do have Discord in our paid area, of course, I mean, you know, you can't just let everybody into Discord or you will get a disaster. That's just the way that works. And there's a few websites. Anyway, we're not even going to go there. You know what happens when everybody gets involved. Paywalls are good sometimes, right? But they have enabled a chat feature that's really cool, especially on mobile. I was looking at it earlier. I really like it. It's just a simple way that, I can hold it up there. You can see it. Different patrons can just message immediately back and forth, and I can create topics. So maybe there's a big winter storm coming or hurricane so-and-so. And I can create a real quick chat on Patreon, and we can all talk there. I can post a few pictures. I think members can too. And then we go bigger, of course, on Discord, and then everything wraps into HurricaneTrack Insider for our field mission work, which is funded. It's like a big circle, right? The circle of Patreon. There you go. To borrow from the circle of life analogy. Then we are able to keep doing what we do 12 months out of the year, covering pretty much any type of big weather event that we can physically and fiscally, money-wise, get to. A couple big things are going to be coming up for next year. We're going to do a Zoom meeting in November with our patrons to talk about some huge projects coming up, branching out even more beyond hurricanes. Very exciting stuff coming. So anyway, just wanted to mention it to you. A big round of applause. I should have one of those soundboards, right? For Patreon and the innovation that they continue to provide for people like me and others that are on there as well, from weather creators to anything else that you can imagine. The world of crowdfunding is remarkable. It really is. So there you go. All right, let's get this online for you, and then I'll go about my day, and you'll do the same for you, I guess. Look at that. Kind of looks like a face. That guy, was it Daba? You ever seen him on Twitter? He draws those faces with the interesting little arrow things. Anyway, I got to get this on before I get in trouble. Easily distracted am I, if I allow it to be. All right, you guys have a great rest of your Thursday. He makes some great posts, by the way. Say what you will about how archaic they can be, but I love the straightforward. You know exactly what you're getting into if you follow that dude. Pretty cool guy. Anyhow, thanks for tuning in. I am Mark Suttle. From all of us at HurricaneTrack, I'll be back with more for you tomorrow morning.